like to call the meeting of the North Little Rock City Planning Commission to order, please. And at this time, I would like to welcome the city viewing for this. And if you are watching or listening, you can go to the North Little Rock nlr.ar.gov and go on to Government Council Video, and you can, I'm told, can watch this on your iPhone. So we will call the roll. We'd first like to welcome Alderman Beth White is here with us today, and our Chief of Staff Danny Bradley is here with us, and our Fire Marshal John Pallister is here with us today. So with that, Mr. Sean, would you please call the roll?
Alexander.
Here.
Velasco.
Here.
Chambers.
Here.
Dietz.
Here.
Foster.
Here.
Harris.
Here.
Phillips.
Here.
White. And Chairman Clifton.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
I'm going to move to excuse the absent members.
Motion made and seconded that we approve the absent members today. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We have a reminder, if you have not, please turn off your cell phones. And if you plan on speaking today, we don't have a sign-in sheet. We don't do that. But if you are going to speak, please limit your remarks to 3 minutes or less. Thank you. Would appreciate that. Under administrative, Mr. McFadden.
Yes, Chairman Clifton, it's come to our attention that there is at least one thing on the agenda that may be a little contentious, and I've been informed that there may have been individuals who have come to the commissioners individually to speak about one thing is on the agenda. And that being said, I'd just like to take this time to inform you all. I was told that not everybody knew, but there is a current litigation concerning the rezoning and the amendment to the master street plan. And so, while that's not on the agenda now, I've been told that there are interested parties who may or may not have spoken to you all individually about this. So it is my advice to you all, just advice, I can't tell you all what to do. You don't have to take it if you don't want to, but it's my advice, but that this does come up and these individuals or interested parties do talk to you all, then I advise not to discuss this issue.
Okay, thank you.
But as related to what's on the agenda today, that's completely fine.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McFadden. Next order of business is
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Spencer.
I had one item that wasn't really marked on. Just want to point out, about a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago, you were handed out the executive summary for the Park Hill Jumpstart and Levy Jumpstart. We're going to go ahead and send that to City Council, but I just want to make it aware, everybody, that you got this about 2 months ago, and it is going to go to City Council for approval. So I'm just giving you a heads up on that, and if anybody
I thought it had already been approved.
Pardon?
I thought it had already been approved.
Not the executive summary.
Oh.
So it hasn't been, so the Jumpstart itself has been approved, but the executive summary and the implementation plan has not. So those will be sent on to City Council for their approval and acceptance.
Do we need to take any action on that?
If you want to show support for it, yeah, I'd like to ask for support to send it on
Okay.
to City Council.
Do I hear a motion that this be sent to City Council? Motion made and seconded that this executive summary be sent to the City Council with a recommendation from the Planning Commission. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Spencer. We'll move to the Development Review Committee. We have 5 items on the agenda today, and I think one might be lengthy. So,
Mr. Chairman, we need to approve the minutes first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. You have been.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded, the minutes submitted to you be approved. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Mr. Chambers?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, without objection, I'm going to ask that item B be the last item that I report on. Item A is site plan review 2441-15 Park Hill Edition, Lot 23A, Block 201, site plan review of a Med Express at 5505 JFK Boulevard. The applicant was present and addressed items 1 through 10 and agreed to the items 1 through 10 in subsections, and with that, the Development Review Committee recommends approval.
Second?
Motion made and seconded that the item be approved as submitted. Are there any comments from anyone in the audience on this application? Any comments from any of the commissioners? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Item C is NS 2443-15 Buckeye Edition, Lot 2, preliminary plat site plan review of a modular building located at southwest corner of Buckeye and 5th Streets. The applicant was present and agreed to items 1 through 10 in subsections, and with that, the Development Review Committee recommends approval.
Second?
Motion made and seconded to be approved as submitted. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this application? Any comments from any of the commissioners? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Item D is NS 2445-15 Calvary Edition, Lot 3, preliminary plat site plan review of a parking lot extension located at 1401 Calvary Road. The applicant was present and agreed to items 1 through 11 and subsections, and with that, the Development Review Committee recommends approval.
Second?
Motion made and seconded that this application be approved as submitted. Anyone in the audience would like to speak for or against this application? Any comments from the commissioner? Mr. White?
Did we get the letter from the city engineer?
Yes, we did. It is not a hillside cut.
Any other comments? On the application, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Mr. Spencer, please note that I did abstain from voting on that item.
Item E, NS 2438-15 Rock City CrossFit Edition, Lot 1, preliminary plat and site plan review of a fitness center located at 6910 to Waffle Baker Drive. Applicant was present, agreed to items 1 through 10 in subsections, and with that, the Development Review Committee recommends approval.
Second?
Motion made and seconded that this application be approved as submitted. Anyone in the audience would like to speak on this application? Any comments from any of the commissioners? On the application, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And returning to item B, NS 2442-15 Trails at the Rock Edition, Lot 1, preliminary plat and site plan review of apartments located between Young Road and Crystal Hill Road and Pebble Drive right-of-way. The applicant was present and agreed to items 1 through 10 in subsections, and with that, the Development Review Committee recommended approval.
Second?
Motion made and seconded that this item be approved as submitted. Are there any comments from anyone in the audience? Yes, sir. Please come forward and give us your name, please.
I'm Gene Pfeiffer. I'm the developer of North Shore Business Park, one of your corporate citizens in North Little Rock. I object to many of the waivers. You've been furnished a sheet that shows what they are. The first waiver is of the stormwater detention. You have a stormwater detention plan and a in lieu fee therein that's intended if the stormwater detention is not provided, the in lieu fee is to be used elsewhere in the drainage basin for stormwater detention. Applicant is going to have to build the Boundary Street improvements on Young Road in any event, and allowing him to spend the in lieu fee to build a road he'd have to build otherwise is in effect simply waiving the stormwater detention fee, which I don't think you want to do, or I don't think that your ordinance really permits you to do. The next three waivers have to do with the street through the project. There's on-street parking on that street as shown. The applicant has adequate property to provide the off-street parking that you require. If you look at the plan, there's no off-street parking at all for Building 1. Building 1, the entirety of the parking required for it is off-street. The on-street parking will prevent this street from carrying any traffic if you intended this street to be a street that carries traffic. There are 5 curb cuts on this street. No left turn lane is provided into those 5 curb cuts. so that with left-turning movements, cars parking, cars unparking, people having parked their cars, opening their doors, this plan with on-street parking through this development will not carry the cars as intended. And the other two bullet points under that have to do with radiuses and tangents that don't meet your code for this type of street. I've also furnished you a supplemental letter from the traffic engineer, Ernie Peters, the leading traffic consultant in Central Arkansas. I had previously furnished you a traffic study that related to the location of the road itself. At that point, that consultant had not seen this plan that has the right angle turn, has the on-street parking, and so this letter supplements his traffic study and again says that this street will not carry the traffic that we think you intend it to carry. Under item C, your ordinances require that a stub-out street to a street that's intended to be a future through street, the applicant should pave the street to the boundary line. This applicant has not done that, and the location of that stub-out is aimed directly at the steepest part of the adjacent mountain at a right angle. The only way that that street can be continued is if that stub-out were to hit the mountain at an oblique angle where the continuation of the road could stay on the lower elevations of the mountain, but instead the stub-out is aimed directly at the steepest part of the mountain, making the continuation of that road to North Shore Lane virtually impossible. Item D, you have a waiver that is requested based upon a misstatement of fact. This waiver was requested because the applicant claims that there are off-site steep property adjacent to where this sidewalk ought to go. That steep property is on the site. It is not off-site. And applicant could simply do something about the steep elevations that he's complaining about or move the street away from those steep elevations. And that very sidewalk that's being waived is the sidewalk that serves all of the off-street parking for building number one. The people parking their cars for building number one would have no sidewalk servicing their parking lots. There are 6 other waivers being requested under item E on my handout. Those waivers either are required and not requested by the applicant, hasn't even requested them, and has certainly, where not requested, hasn't justified them. But in other cases where they have been requested, there's not ample justification under your rules and regulations, and therefore I ask that you not grant these 12 waivers that are a part of applicant's submittal to you today.
Thank you, Mr. Pfeiffer.
Thank you.
Can I ask you one question?
Mr. Pfeiffer, for questions, please. Mr. Foster.
Is this a list that you compiled, or who compiled this list?
Good question. I had some professional help compiling it.
Tell me who that is. My credibility.
The firm of White Daters and Associates helped me do this. I did have some skills in this area, but I needed some professional help to put it all together. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak at this time?
Good afternoon. I'm Danny Bradley. I'm Chief of Staff for Mayor Smith. He would have been here today, but he is out of town. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board. The Mayor's office, Mayor Smith, myself, other city officials have been working on this project for a number of months. The city's engineers have looked at the plans. The planning department have looked at the plans. There have been several modifications made during the process. And I'm here to say that Mayor Smith is fully in support of the plan as presented. I'd like to address a couple of the issues that Mr. Pfeiffer brought up regarding the offset of the stormwater retainage. The improvements that are being made in lieu of are not improvements to Young Road that the developer would have to make, because he's only required to make the improvements on the Young Road that adjoin his property. The improvements that will be made are not in front of his property. They are to the west of his property, and it's not adjoining the property in question here. Secondly, the termination, the developer has offered to terminate the road that goes into Mr. Pfeiffer's property at an angle that would satisfy his completion of the road. It's probably depicted as a straight-on, but they have said that they will angle the road so that it could be completed at a reasonable angle. So this process has been going on for months. We've met with the developer, we've met with Mr. Pfeiffer, we've met with both the developer, Mr. Pfeiffer, the landowners out there. They have referred it to their engineers, so it has been thoroughly debated. As to the traffic study, our traffic engineer disagrees with the traffic engineering study that Mr. Pfeiffer has provided. He has done studies out there and has produced some graphic simulations that are very much contrary to what has been presented by Mr. Pfeiffer's traffic engineer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bradley. Any questions from Mr. Bradley at this time? Anyone else have a comment?
Thank you. I'm Steve Keene, president of Powers of Arkansas. We are residents in the North Shore Business Development. I'm joined here by several members of our staff. Well, I don't want to take a lot of your time. You all have copies of a letter we wrote to the mayor concerning this issue. I would like to emphasize how strongly we feel that the current negotiations will not allow proper development of this road and will actually increase the traffic problems. As residents, or we work in this park, we've experienced, studies are good, but we experience it every day, and we see the issues that happen. And we strongly feel that the way it's going right now will deny the proper extension of North Shore Lane around the east side of the mountain that would provide a second proper entrance to the North Shore Park. So I would just strongly ask you to deny approval at this time, and possibly the developer will sit down and negotiate a real solution to this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Anyone else would like to speak at this time? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Leslie Heisman. I'm with Arkansas Surgical Hospital. With me today are Beth Nettles and Jason Garibay, also from the hospital. We're in the North Shore Business District as well. Today we're representing our surgeon owners and the CEO, who wrote a letter to you all back in April, requesting a second entrance to relieve the daily congestion at the entrance to the North Shore Business Park. In consideration of your time, I'm not going to read that letter, but I'll recap it briefly. We respectfully request that you oppose, as we do, the waivers to the apartment development plan before you today, because it does not adequately provide the necessary second entrance to the North Shore Business Park. And respectfully, I understand the traffic plans that y'all have seen, but I experience this daily when I'm trying to get in and out of the business park to go to work and to come home. Arkansas Surgical Hospital employs 300 full and part-time employees. We've made a tremendous investment in the city of North Little Rock, and we remain vitally concerned about emergency vehicle ingress and egress. An emergency, every weekday, an emergency could occur at our hospital, at the Crystal Hills School, or anywhere in the park, and it could be disastrous. So we're asking you to please not approve the waivers, and to please have a reconsideration and come up with a better plan to allow ingress and egress. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? Anyone else would like to speak?
May I have 30 seconds, please?
Yes, sir.
Due respect to Chief Bradley, two comments. His statement that the developer is willing to change the angle, I haven't seen that. And I would think that for you to consider it or for me to consider it, we ought to see something on paper submitted to us. He mentions the traffic study by the city. We've had a 30 or 40-page traffic study by a professional and submitted it to the city for analysis, comment, or to be disputed. To hear a verbalization that the city's traffic engineer, possibly under the influence of city staff, has produced a contrary study that refutes the written one, I would think that we would be given the opportunity to see in writing what the city's staff has prepared. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name's Chris Wilburn. I'm the city traffic director, and I was in charge of the work that we did in terms of review of the traffic study that was submitted. So let me give you a little bit of a summary. We have been, for the last few months, working on timing plans for the North Shore Crystal Hill intersection due to complaints, previous complaints in the past. Currently, the intersection, we have complete video control of North Shore and Crystal Hill. We also have control of video at I-430. And we took the study from Mr. Pfeiffer's consultant, Ernie Peters, and they did a traffic number count at Crystal Hill and North Shores, summarizing peak AM, peak PM, and peak school time traffic. Since we had video at that location, we were able to verify that the counts were in the ballpark of what that study showed. So one of the things that had come out in City Council, I was asked to do a memo. One of the things that came out is, could there be anything done at North Shores and Crystal Hill to improve it? And two things. The timing plans, which were originally done by the Highway Department, were done years and years ago, and had not been updated since the development of North Shores. So our study basically involved timing plan changes, and what we did is we took the traffic numbers from the consultant's report that we agreed with and retimed that signal for AM peak traffic, PM peak, and school time peak. And we ran that on some engineering software. We also looked at what improvements could be made at that intersection based upon future traffic. And we came up with a couple. One would be putting in a dual left turn lane from North Shores going out to Crystal Hill, and one would be possibly a dedicated right turn lane coming in to Crystal Hill for AM peak periods. We ran simulations on those. They do show a benefit based upon their traffic numbers, and which we approve of. As of this last month, before school was out, we redid all our timing plans on that intersection, and we have also videoed the AM peak time, the PM peak, and the school PM time, and have seen the improvements. We have those for anybody who would like to take a look at them. And so in terms of that, a few of the other items that were brought up, we are planning to design the development, the collector street, to handle the potential for truck traffic in the future. If the back end of North Shore subdivision is somehow tied in to Young Road and comes, we've asked Lindsay consultants to make sure that the connections from Young Road into their development, and also the connection from the road leading out to Crystal Hill, it connects into a state highway and would have to meet all the requirements of the state highway department, which we require. So the goal from an engineering standpoint is that road will be designed to handle truck traffic that potentially would come out, or traffic that would come into the subdivision, such as emergency vehicles and all that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilburn.
I have a question for Mr.
Mr.
Wilburn.
Chambers, we have a question, Mr. Wilburn.
Mr. Wilburn, just to clarify, you also did a projected study of your current improvements that includes the number of apartments that are going to be built. So when that is built out, your improvements will still function at a C or better level, or D or better level?
What we've studied now, in reviewing their study, they came up with a distribution of traffic from the apartment complex. It's 415 units, and I agree with the calculation of their engineer on the total volume that's coming. They used, I believe, a distribution of, they said 66% of all traffic coming from...
The word distribution actually means split, how it's going
Yeah,
to go
how
in
it's
and
split.
out. Okay.
Their engineer made the determination that 66% of the projected traffic coming out of the apartment complex would go to North Shores and Crystal Hill intersection. That's one of the things I disagree with in terms of time of day that their main traffic would be, and also the fact that there's would be a separate connection to Crystal Hill. I don't feel that 66% of that traffic would go to North Shores and Crystal Hill.
Well, we're currently discussing just this development.
Yeah.
There is a lot of empty land out there, a tremendous amount of it. And I cannot foresee all of it staying soybean fields for the next 20 years.
Correct.
And my interest is that in the long run, and I've tried to couch all of my planning commission decisions, what happens in 20 years? And I just do not see personally how this plan supports the ultimate build-out of the area and able to accommodate. I mean, if there's yet another apartment complex built and yet another apartment complex built, things will fail dramatically out there. So that's why I'm asking.
Well, let me add one thing to your comment. There are possibilities. I've talked about two possible improvements that could be done at North Shores and Crystal Hill. I've made the comment that the consultant for Lindsay will design the road the proposed road tying into Crystal Hill. It will be designed for a design vehicle. So maneuverability coming in and out of the park will not be an issue because the geometry will meet that. If in the future, and I went over this at City Council meeting, if in the future the Highway Department is in control of the intersection that ties into their road, if traffic warrants in the future, the spacing is fine, you can add a signal at this road going out if it warrants, and I have done preliminary discussions with them that they would support that if it warrants. So if traffic increases along this collector to the point that where the entrance at Crystal Hill warrants a signal, they would be supportive of putting one in. So that's a way of handling additional traffic in the future, is whenever it becomes warranted, then you would put in a signal. And that signal would be coordinated. That means working in unison with the signals at North Shore and Crystal Hill and also I-430.
One final question. If North Shore does build out to Young Road and Young Road's improved to this current collector intersection,
Yes.
and the North Shore traffic proceeds to funnel through the apartment complex. If there's a traffic problem, are you willing to consider eliminating a lane of parking to improve the flow of traffic in the constricted collector?
Well, I'm the city engineer, I'm not the engineer for the developer.
Yeah. I'm talking about in the future, some 5 years from now, things get all clogged up. I'm just speculating. No answers required.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Foster?
I think that the fact that there is a traffic signal at North Shore and Crystal Hill, and there's not going to be one proposed at the new road in Crystal Hill, is the reason that 60% of those folks will be using that intersection and not the one that doesn't have the signal?
No, I don't agree with that, and I'll elaborate. All right.
The reason I asked that is because I'm
No,
trying to put
I
myself
want to
in that-
elaborate because this has got to do with the percentage that was chosen by the engineering consultant. And he's a fine engineer. There's just a disagreement here, and I'm going to tell you why I don't think 66% will go to North Shore and Crystal Hill. Let's take the projections that were done were based upon the way that work is, and we agree with these numbers, were based upon projections basically in the AM and PM and peak hours of traffic during the AM and PM. School PM, there is not a lot of traffic that goes in and out of an apartment complex at 2:35 in the afternoon. So school PM is not really an issue for in and out of traffic. So let's talk about PM traffic. Most of the traffic will be coming, not all of it, but most of it will be coming off of 430. And most of the traffic will be coming eastbound on Maumelle Boulevard, coming to the apartment complex. Some of it will be coming on Crystal Hill westbound, but most of it will be coming from the interstate. So why, if you have an entrance, if the proposed entrance is made into the apartment complex, that's a right turn, why would you ever turn in at Crystal Hill and North Shore? You would just go down a few hundred feet and turn directly in to the apartment complex to get to your home. That's PM, okay?
Right.
So why would you think 66% would turn in North Shore? I don't agree with that assumption. So the other thing, let's take AM in the morning. There is a very large amount of traffic that is going into North Shore complex in the morning. In addition, the traffic that is coming out of North Shores is mostly from the school during a peak period in the morning. But almost all the AM peak period is going into North Shore, not coming out of North Shore. So if you're in an apartment complex and you're going to work, you're actually coming out during the heavy AM peak time is not your movement. You're actually leaving the apartments. And if you're going, let's say you're going east on 430, you're going to come out of the apartments and take a right on Crystal Hill and get on I-40 going east. If you're going, now, you will turn left if you're trying to hit 430 to go into Little Rock. And like I said, we have studied that. If it warrants, a signal gets put in there. If it doesn't warrant, the highway department doesn't believe you should put in a signal where it doesn't warrant, nor do I.
Well, I'm just trying to put myself in the situation of living there, and I think I'd use both of them, so I don't know if 60%
Well,
are right or
I agree with you. At times, some of them will use North Shore and Crystal Hill, but the numbers that were in the report that were 66%, I don't agree with that, and what the report reported, based upon that increased traffic, they were documenting that the level of service at North Shore and Crystal Hill were compromised. And I don't think that, and if it is compromised at North Shore, adding a dual left turn lane, keeping your right turn lane there will alleviate that or help alleviate that problem, and we've got simulations that show the improvements for that.
Well, it's good to have on the table that consideration would be given to signal at the new intersection. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilburn.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, Mr. Wilburn, one more question. Mr. Chambers?
Mr. Wilburn, we rely on the city engineering department, and I realize you're not our city engineer, but we rely on the city engineer department to basically certify the streets are designed properly and things like this. And the letter points out 3 points where the collector is not designed to collector standards. So my question is, true?
I will review that. I have not seen that letter.
Okay. So if it's not designed to collector standards, should we review it again next month and be sure that it meets those standards? I mean,
Well, I can review the comments that were made from an engineering standpoint.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
In that vein, let me ask you this. It seems to me that there are 4 different parties that need to have continued discussion. So I guess right now we have a second, we're doing the question and answer. At what point do we, can I make a motion for just to postpone this for 30 days and let these individuals work this out? I mean, can I make a motion for that, or where are we at on
The
that?
proper motion.
I make a motion to defer this for 30 days, because it seems to me like there's some more negotiations that need to be underway, because there's 4 really great parties here that I think just need to come together.
Okay. Motion's made, or an amendment to the motion is made that this be postponed.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant's here, and he may want to speak
Yes, sir.
before you make a vote or anything.
Good afternoon. I'm George DeCane with Blue & Associates. You have a comment?
Go ahead.
Just wanted to address some of the comments that I've heard tonight. We are making that connection according to the master street plan, what was approved by the city council. So the roads that we are putting in is in accordance to the master street plan and what was voted and approved by the city council. Mr. Pfeiffer mentioned that, that he hasn't seen any plans on rotating the angle of where it comes into his mountain, and I have been given authority to make adjustments to that to appease the city and Mr. Pfeiffer in that particular location, more the city than Mr. Pfeiffer in that respect. We do believe that Young Road is a potential connection to North Shore Lane that would allow the traffic from the development that Mr. Pfeiffer has created to actually filter through the roads that we are putting in. We are also willing to work with the city engineer to correct any deficiencies that there might be in the case of the master street plans and making sure that they do meet city requirements in that. It was mentioned that the 90-degree turn didn't meet city standards for a collector street. If you look at it, it's actually more of an intersection than it is a turn inside the collector. It's one road that can go straight or angle to the left, and then another intersection or another collector that actually connects out to Young Road. So there is that 90-degree turn necessarily, if you have an intersection like Main Street does to this street right here, you wouldn't try and put in a collector turn at that point. You would actually do a 90-degree turn plus radiuses that allow for truck traffic to make right turns or left turns or what it needs to be. We have worked for many months on trying to iron out a lot of these issues. We've worked with the city. We've had meetings with Mr. Pfeiffer's party, Mr. Chandler's party, and we thought we were bringing to the city something that the city wanted, as well as what was requested of us to bring. If that's not the case, then, my apologies, but we did have that understanding that what we are presenting today meets the master street plan and meets the requirements of the city as far as we know. In regards to the on-street parking, after discussions with the city, this is very, the sidewalks where they are with the on-street parking actually create a nice buffer zone to keep people who are walking down these major streets from actually being closer to the street. It pushes people away from the street, creates a more of a walkable situation, allows people to more safely travel down that main road. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything else that was discussed, but there were numerous items, and I'm here to answer any questions that any of you may have.
Mr. Spencer, this application has gone through the Development Review Committee, and this is sent around to each department for any comments that any department heads have to present to the Development Review Committee for review for us to look at and refine and see about. Is that correct?
That's correct. So
And all this has been
we get
done?
comments back from the utility companies and from any fire department, CATA, any other departments that are interested in participating in the subdivision process.
The comments that were presented to the Development Review Committee by the city departments, have they been addressed by the applicant
Yes.
all the way through?
Yes.
Any comments that they've had?
Not, all comments have been reflected on the drawings that have been presented, and then after the comments from the subdivision committee, new drawings were in the file that represented those changes.
Okay. All right. Mr. White?
On-street parking.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's the only issue I have is on-street parking, because there's an apartment house by me, and as soon as they allow on-street parking, everybody parks on the street when they just pull in front of their apartment because it's closer for them to walk if it's allowed. And on the street that I have property, which I bought from Mr. Deeds, we have on-street parking, and it's a nightmare. And my street's a lot wider than the street that you are building, according to Mr. Pfeiffer, and it is an issue, and I've complained to the city. That's the only issue I have. Why do we have to have on-street parking?
On-street parking will help us facilitate apartment parking as well. Allows for walkability, as I mentioned before, but it was part of, in order to bring the master street plan through the property as it is, it allows us to add in additional parking spaces for the residents. We see, basically it allows for additional parking for the residents, if that answers your question.
I guess that's the problem I have. If it's easier to park on the street, then I'm not gonna park inside the apartments. And a good example is some apartments off of North Hills, because we've run into this problem the whole time. A good example is where my office is, when you can walk in this door instead of parking on the parking spot that has 100 places to park. It's easier to walk off of it, walk on the sidewalk, go in this door, instead of parking over here and have to walk 50 yards. So it becomes now that the parking spaces that you're providing for the apartment, nobody's using them because it's easier to use on-street parking. That's the only issue I have on this whole thing, is the on-street parking. Is there any way to limit it, do away with it? You know, I mean, how many vehicles are we talking? You know, how many vehicles can we limit with no parking signs, you know, and stuff like that? Because it's, again, just like my office, it is a nightmare. And just this afternoon, I walk out of my office, and here's a car. He's going the wrong direction. He parks in front of the building. Then he decides to leave, so he goes through my property so he can turn around and park on the other side of the street. And my concern is fire trucks, and plus I'm beside 2 nursing homes too, or assisted living, I guess I should call them. And it is a concern for me if my building catches on fire, or they catch on fire, if anybody can get down. So I'm not a big advocate of on-street parking. So how many are we talking about?
You mentioned fire trucks. We would actually make the road wide enough to meet the fire code, so it would be 12-foot-6 lanes, so that it'd be more than adequate to be able to.
And I agree with you 100%. The problem is and I'm using my street, which is wider than this street. But if I'm coming up to go into my,
How wide is your street?
how wide is my street? I was told I'm wider than your street by Mr. Pfeiffer. So I'm taking him at his word, because it's on Parkstone Circle, you can go measure it, I'll measure it tomorrow. But at the same time, it is a wide street. You know, I can have a car park and 2 cars can get there. But if I'm coming down and there's a car park, fire truck can't get down through there, okay, is what it amounts to. So my concern is, I don't like on-street parking. I don't, I'm concerned about that. And so how many, again, my big question is, how many are we gonna have on street? Is it gonna be 10 cars? Is it gonna be 120 cars?
We've got anywhere from about
Yeah.
50 to 60 parking spaces on the street.
Okay.
50, over 50.
I picked up on something you said.
Yeah.
You said if somebody on your street, and I haven't looked at the width of your street, but you said if there's a car parked on the side, on either side, fire truck can't get through?
If another car is coming down the middle of it, because we gotta drive down the middle of the street to get there. So if we got a car on this side, we got a car on this side, or if we have a car on this side, and I'm coming down, and a fire truck comes, I gotta back up. And the only reason I know that is I have to back up for that ambulance.
All right.
Yeah.
This road is, this collector is 42 foot wide, back curb to back curb.
Okay.
As I recall, the parking is what, 8 foot? 8 foot on either side.
Okay.
Plenty of room. So that means each lane there is 12 foot 6 inches. Normal lane is 12, well, normal lane varies from 11 to 12 foot. This is on the high side. If this had been a road, let's say like Main Street, the width of Main Street right outside of the front door that has on-street parking, just like this is proposed, the lane widths are 10 foot 6 to 11 foot.
Okay.
So we've increased that, just because it's a collector trying to meet some widths, to 12 foot 6 lanes with 8 foot to give a little bit of a buffer. So there is not the issue of a car going one way and a fire engine going the other way and not being able to get through.
And a car parked on the side as well.
Both sides.
Okay, all right.
Yep. Okay.
Still don't like it, though.
And I just want to make sure those parking stripes are striped, those parking spaces, so they are designated for that and do allow enough room to be able to park on both sides.
Okay, so they will be striped.
Yes.
You just indicated to us that this on-street parking was for additional parking for your residents. But in our application here, it says that on-street parking is part of the required parking. So you're providing those parking spaces to meet your requirement, to meet the city's parking requirements. Is that not true, or is what I have here in writing incorrect? If you, maybe answer the question this way. If we eliminated all your on-street parking, would you meet the city's parking requirements? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
That question was
I
answered.
don't want to put words, I think he meant additional as in more, not additional.
I understood what he said.
yeah.
I understood.
But
He's a salesman.
Okay,
I have one question.
hold on just a second. Mr. Chambers?
Is there any substantial harm? I have questions regarding the master street plan, the compliance of the collector and its turns and all that. Sounds like changes will be made to the plat to comply with the requirements of the city. Lines will be moved, things like that. Is time of the essence? Is it essential that you absolutely positively have to be on a dead certain schedule? Will 30 days make a difference?
I do not believe so at this time, but my client is not currently available to find out from him, but I do not believe that time is of the essence at this point.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Foster has another question.
I don't know if it's directed at you, but this is my feelings about what's going on here. When I, as commissioner here, approved, modification to the master street plan, as my understanding, we're going to have a clean collector basically come into the property and go on the north side of the mountain, and you're going to have apartments on both sides of this collector. It's also my understanding, and I think Mr. White made the suggestion of having a stub out for a future possibility of extending the collector around kind of the east and the south portion of the hill out there, okay? And that was in my understanding, that stub out, so to speak, was to occur before the collector got into the apartment complexes. Right? And that was my understanding when we approved the street master plan. Now that we've got more detail of what's actually proposed, I always go back and say, you know, the devil's in the details. And in this fact, I think that may be true, because it appears to me that, number one is we have a collector that terminates into apartment complex of parking drives and parking lots. Number two is the stub out was not provided where it's my understanding the stub out was going to be. And those are my basic two issues there about, you know, if I'd known this kind of detail up front, I would not have voted to modify the street master plan. And that's why I agree, Mr. Harris here, fellow commissioner, that those issues, to me, and I don't know if, you know, this would be up to a vote for the rest of my fellow commissioners here, that we postpone that and have the parties of interest out there get together and see how we can eliminate these problems, at least as I perceive them.
I just want to make, if I may, originally when I first got involved in this project, and we're talking, it's been a while, so my memory may be hazy. Originally, when we first got involved in this project, that Collector Street was going to kind of angle into the mountain, and that was pretty much was going to be the end of it, and then it was going to be up to Mr. Pfeiffer or whoever owns that piece of property to extend the road onto North Shore Lane. Since then, we were told that it was in the city's interest, best interest, to make a connection to Young Road so that we could build the road at this time. Now, my recollection may be hazy, but that is what I remember of it. And the master street plan was kind of created in that way so that we could have the connection at this point when building out this development. So I understand what you're saying, where you didn't expect it to come down and then come across and then have all this on-street parking on it. But we, you know, when we originally came in, we didn't expect to have a collector that would cut all the way across. We have made allowances with the city to be able to put in that road and work with them in having that collector connection to Young Street.
Which
Now,
road are you
I may
talking
be
about?
speaking out of turn, and if I am, please correct me, but that is my recollection out of it.
You talking about the future collector that would go around the east and south of the hill out there?
Yeah, I'm trying to get my bearings. I believe it would go along the north,
You want this?
north and east side of the mountain.
That might help you. I
When you
think,
say south and east, are you talking about here?
No.
What are you talking about?
Right, yeah. Perhaps either one of those. And see, I was thinking this is where it would be. I didn't mind having it come through here.
That stuff up can still happen. Nobody's saying that stuff up can't.
But I still have a problem with the collector having parking on it.
The stub out would be nice to have.
I don't see a reason why we wouldn't be able to have a stub out. I mean, it's a stub out for a future road if Mr. Chandler decides to develop his property. Nothing that we're doing here is going to not allow people to develop additional roads in the future. It's not like we can stop people from developing roads into this development or through this development or connections into Pebble Road. Sometimes I listen to some of these comments and it's almost like this is the end-all project and this is the last project and this is the project that's going to make, and it's really not. It's part of development to build roads.
Well, this is something that
Well-
if it gets passed here today and the waivers gets granted here today, it will be your responsibility to build it like this.
Correct.
So that's why everyone is concerned about what may, could be, should be, will be done.
And that makes sense, and I totally understand that, but I'm just saying future development,
Yes,
with
sir.
future
We
development comes
understand.
roads as well.
Okay, one more comment. Gentleman over here had a comment, and this man back here has been asking, so two more, please.
My name is Gene Scott. I'm the president and CEO of Travel Nurse Across America, and I'm also the chairman of Adafio Technologies. Both businesses reside in the North Shore Park. We built a building there in 2008. And from 2008 to now, there's been a significant increase. I'm not a traffic study guy. I'm not a development guy. I know what I experience every day, and I know what my employees experience every day, especially when I have technicians that are trying to get in and out of there all day long, going all over the state. We moved from our building on Cantrell West, which we own, to North Shore for the purpose of being able to get easy access in and out. And over time, we've seen that get more and more difficult. Mr. Pfeiffer has a great development out there, and it's not finished. And so, in Mr. Chambers' vein, when we're talking about future, we need to think about not what traffic count is just today, but what traffic count is going to be coming in and out of that park as it gets developed. It is a prime area for people who are tired of getting log jammed in West Little Rock. Trust me, I own property in West Little Rock as well, and so it pains me to see my tenants wanting to move out, but I like coming into North Shore because of that. Now I'm having difficulty in leasing part of my building because of when people come, if they come at the wrong time, and I got stuck in traffic coming over here tonight, if they come at the wrong time, it is difficult to get in and out, and they wonder if I'm telling them the truth when I say what a great place this is. So I just ask that consideration be taken.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Philip Pate, I'm principal of RP Power Business out there. I'm also president of the POA out there. It's a volunteer position, don't get paid. And I can tell you pretty much as a group, we want to put the hold on this thing. We've got a big problem out there, and I hear the details and all this, and it's all new to me, to be honest with you. I'm a little shocked that you hadn't come over and talked to us at all. I haven't even heard of the group, and our whole neighborhood is just like, help us, help us. And from a business end, we really are behind the city, and we're trying to grow it out there, and we see this as adding a big problem to the neighborhood out there on top of a big problem we already have. But the thing I want to leave with y'all is I was sitting back here, I just want to represent the group I don't think's represented, and that's those kids at the elementary school. I hear, is it C or better? Let's go for an A out there for those kids, endangering those kids. Let's think about the kids. And I hear bickering over business. And I just, obviously I'm pretty passionate about that, but my window looks out there, and I know that if one of those kids get hurt or sick or something at a certain time of the day, the emergency folks aren't going to get there, and we're all going to be really sad because as a group, we're going to be responsible. So I'm just appealing for the kids that we put this on hold and we get it right. We don't go for a C, we go for an A. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Mr. Dietz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have listened, and I've spent some time out there, different times of the day. I am in favor of the development that we're talking about as far as adding new residents to our city. I am also in favor of the North Shore Business Park. I've seen it grow from, I was there when the bulldozer started, and I've seen it grow and grow and grow, and hopefully it'll continue to grow. And I think that it would behoove the apartment development and Mr. Pfeiffer's development, as well as Mr. Chandler's property, and get with the city to see if we can iron out some of these things and then bring it back. I can see the advantages of having another entrance into Mr. Pfeiffer's development at the east end of Young Road and carry it on out to Crystal Hill. I think that as business grows, the folks on the east end of that development would use that connector street, if you will, to exit the park and go around the apartments and head out. And if we need a traffic light, I think that that is something that could be developed, as Mr. Wilburn stated. I personally, at this point, don't want to deter any development, but I do think that we need to get the traffic situation straightened out, and the only way to do that is for the four principals, if you will, to sit down and come up with a plan and come back to us, and that's why I tend to favor what Mr. Harris's motion is, and that's all I've got to say.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bradley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Pfeiffer got a 30-second follow-up, so I appreciate mine. I'd like to say probably North Shore should have had a second entrance when it was first developed. I don't know if it was granted a waiver or what happened there, but last year, the mayor and I both went out, rode around with Mr. Pfeiffer and said, we've got to find an emergency exit here. And we looked at coming back into Burns Park because there's just one way in. Well, when this development came up, I said, here's an opportunity to get another entrance. Well, as the master street plan existed, the apartment, you couldn't build the apartments on it. So there's no street at all. The plan that abuts the mountain there, the developer said, I mean, if Mr. Pfeiffer will extend it on through his property, we'll do it all at one time. That wasn't accepted. There was another plan to go around kind of at the bottom of the hill. The developer says, we'll pay what it takes to bring it in, the plan that's before you, if Mr. Pfeiffer will finish it out through his property. That wasn't accepted either. So I don't know where it's going to go. I mean, I appreciate what you're doing, and we'll certainly do what we can to negotiate and get something, but the engineers tried, the principals have tried, and this provides a second access. The plan that's before you has an opportunity to be extended by Mr. Pfeiffer to the east and connect with the street into his subdivision. So it provides an eastern entrance and exit to his property if he wishes to extend it through his property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Okay, no, sir, we've had all the discussion. We have a motion on the floor, do not have a second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. This be postponed for, till our next review.
Planning Commission.
Planning Commission meeting and Development Review Committee. Okay, on the motion to postpone, the amendment to the motion to postpone, please call the roll.
Alexander,
Yes.
Blasco,
Man, rock in the hard place. No.
Chambers,
Yes.
Dietz,
Yes.
Foster,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Phillips,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Clifton.
Yes. Your application did pass, or the amendment did pass to postpone this application until further review by the Development Review Committee and come back next month, if the applicant brings it back up. Okay? Okay? Mr. White?
One comment that I have that I'd like Sean to do is I'd like to know how many parking spots they really need.
It
So
was
that-
80, I think the plan called for 86 additional.
86. So I want to know how many parking spots would be inside the parking complex and how many parking spots actually really need to be on the road. That's my first question. Then my second question is, we keep talking about 4 parties. I count a lot more than 4 parties out there. And so the group that spoke the most, I think they should be involved in these meetings too, if they want to be involved in this meeting, and including an invitation to own the school as well. on that. And by the way, whoever said we weren't representing the school, we have a letter from the school too. So we appreciate that, but I think there should be more parties involved than just 4, because it affects y'all's property values, because I don't think you're leasing that property out there or renting those buildings. So anyway, that's my
Okay,
comment.
thank you, Mr. White. Okay, we'll move into our public hearing portion of the meeting. That concludes the Development Review Committee. If you'd like to stay with us for the remainder of the meeting, you're welcome. If not, you can be excused.
Is he gonna pass it down?
You got parking on both sides, those people are gonna cut through. And
We'll just
someone's
have to-
gonna
we'll deal with
oh,
Sean on that.
I didn't realize there was parking on both sides.
Do you need those?
Case number 1726, to rezone property from C2 to C3 to recognize an existing retail center located at 4604 JFK. Is the applicant here? Anyone here for the rezone from C2 to C3 at 4604?
John, wake up.
C2 to C3, this is more or less a housekeeping rezoning. The present building there is a long strip center type building, and C2 zoning allows for just kind of a single type commercial building, like maybe a standalone bank or another standalone building. This C3 allows for the building that's existing, and that's kind of a housekeeping deal that we're trying to rezone to.
Go ahead and give us your name for the record.
John Pownell with Thomas Engineering.
You have been submitted this application. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak for or against this application? Any comments from any of the commissioners?
Move for question.
Motion made and question be called. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Please call the roll on the application.
Alexander,
Yes.
Velasco,
Yes.
Chambers.
Yes.
Dietz. Foster. Harris. Phillips.
Yes.
White. Chairman Clifton.
Yes. Thank you. Your application did pass. See Mr. Spencer, and he can tell you where to go next.
Thank you.
Call me tomorrow.
On item number 2 is rezone case number 1723 to downzone property from I-2 to I-1 to allow a fitness center located at 6910 DeWaffle Baker Drive, described as the Rock City CrossFit Edition, Lot 1. Is the applicant here?
My name is Josh Collins. I'm with Holloway Engineering.
Okay. You have been, have you saw the comments from the staff?
Yes, sir.
Do you agree with those?
Yes, sir.
Anyone in the audience like to speak for or against this application? Any comments from any of the commissioners? Motion made and seconded to be approved. Please call the roll.
White. Phillips.
Yes.
Harris. Foster. Dietz. Chambers. Velasco.
Yes.
Alexander.
Yes.
Chairman Clifton.
Yes. Application did pass. If you'll get with Mr. Spencer, he can tell you where to go next. Thank
Call me
you.
tomorrow.
Next item of business is our public comment. Anyone would like to have a public comment? Mr. White?
You tell me if I'm out of order on that. When, on the previous one, is there a way when you're looking at that if we do have on-street parking, it's limited to one side with the crosswalk?
They could do it any way that's proposed. So if that was something the subdivision and applicant was wanting to do, they could propose that.
Well, I guess I'm talking subdivision, would they consider that?
Yeah, they could.
During this?
We'll make a note of that and
Thank you.
do that. Can do that. Any other comments?
Well, based on
Mr. Foster?
what you just talked about, I'm not going to be for parking on either side of a collector street like that going through there. So be it as it may, you know, if that's what they want to do, if there's another means of going around that apartment project from North Shore around so it doesn't cut through the apartments, they can park all they want to. I'll go along with that waiver, but not the way it's proposed.
And just to add to Mr. Foster's comment, if you visualize that apartment development and there was no collector issue from where it veers into the mountain down south to Young Road, that was not a collector, that was just a local street, we would not have a single problem with them parking on both sides, and it could be a narrower street.
Right.
Save money
Right.
all around. So that's really why the collector master street plan didn't need to change, because it supported the development of a street all the way through and would have relieved the developer a lot of headaches, in my opinion.
Sean, let me ask you if you'd do something in the future for us. You had to read through this thing a couple of times, the comments here that they had to basically agree to do. You know, like on number 1, item E, it says, approve a waiver of sidewalk. That's easy for Charlie to understand, but when you come over here and say, approve the site plan with parking shown, that doesn't indicate to me that there's a waiver for parking lot, for parking where it goes, on-street parking. To be counted as required parking. That's a waiver, you know, so delineate when there is a waiver, there's a waiver, instead of, you know, I think probably most of, be specific. I think most of us know what that is, but I think for the public that reads these, it'd be, maybe benefit them to know that there's a waiver being proposed.
Sean, I can tell you, I'm gonna be looking for a stub out. I just want to stub out on something that, you know.
On an acceptable alignment.
That somebody can attach to at some point in time. So, I mean, I'm gonna be looking for that. And then also tell the gentleman to quit talking about Young Road. So, anyway.
What,
I don't want that traffic coming back behind my house.
Because it looks like to me, with the thing way it's going right now, even if it connects through Young Road and through the apartment complexes like it is, traffic's gonna move so slow through there, they're gonna continue going up Young Road and just further exacerbate the problem in North Shore and in Crystal Hill.
And I do want to point out one thing. The elephant we're not looking at is if someone built that bridge on Young Road and you could go down Young Road and all the way back out to Crystal Hill and get on at the Crystal Hill exit.
That's right.
That's a huge shortcut that no one is looking at all. But rebuilding that bridge that burned down was set on fire intentionally in 1976. That would be a huge
I didn't do it on
asset.
purpose.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made and seconded. We adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.